correspond to the three avodas of the three things that the world stands on. Al Torah, Al Avodah, Al Gemilas Chasadim. We said the first Kaddish is about Halah Milmata L'mayla, the elevation from below to above. That elevation from below to above, that's tefillah, that's davening, like it's a ladder going upwards. Then you have the second Kaddish, that is the Hamshacha going Milmayla Lamata, like Torah is something that came down here into this world. Hashem and His Malachim come down here in this world to hear how the Yidden learn Torah, what's the Yidden's understanding in Torah, and so on. Then there is the level of the Kaddish HaGimel, that's the level of coming down into this world even further, even lower, with mitzvahs. So we're holding the last paragraph on the second page of the Maimer, Reish Samach Gimel. Ois Gimel. V'hinei Kaddish Perush Mufresh Muvdal. Kaddish means that it's separated, removed from below. That's the meaning of Kaddish, removed from something. That's also the idea of davening, Kaddish HaAleph. The first Kaddish is about being removed and uplifted. It's the idea is being elevated from below to above, in a way of separation and removal, till he totally removes himself from this world. He's totally offering himself up to Hashem, connecting to Hashem completely. Since also Torah and Gemilas Chasadim, that we said that both of those is the opposite direction. It's not about going from below to above, it's about drawing down from above to below. These are the second and third Kaddishes that it says. Therefore, we must say, also, in Torah mitzvahs, though they are all about coming down here, they also have the idea of being separated and removed. So how does that fit with being coming from above to below? So the Rebbe says, we can say the explanation as this, according to what it says in Tanya, that the involvement in Torah mitzvahs is also about offering up my soul to Hashem, elevating my soul to Hashem in such a way I'm completely devoting myself, like the person is even after 120. That's the idea of separation and removal. So if so, why are there three different categories? In this self-sacrifice, in this offering up, in this devotion to Hashem, there's three levels. Shem Gimel Kedoshas Anal. These are the three levels of Kedusha that we said before. Top of the next page, Reish Samach Dal. To be able to explain the different levels of the Mesiras Nefesh, though, like we quoted from the Alter Rebbe, that the fulfillment of mitzvahs is also about self-sacrifice, mikol makim, still and all. The mitzvahs are measured and have a boundary, like we spoke about yesterday, that there's a particular place and time and the way how we have to do the mitzvah. It's a very limited form, and there's only 613 mitzvahs. You can't add mitzvahs and so on. Like it's explained in a different place. In what Chazal say, it says on the pasuk that after Moshe Rabbeinu told Aaron what to do, so Vayaskein Aaron. Aaron did it that way. What does it come to tell you? That this is what Aaron did. Lahagid shvachit shel Aaron shloishina. The Chazal say this comes to relate the praise of Aaron that he didn't change. So why would you think that he would change? What would be reason to think that Aaron would change? Because we could think that when he's in a state of complete such excitement and such devotion, he'll lose track of the details. He's like completely out of this world. Mikol Malkim, despite that being in a state of such total Mesiras Nefesh, Loishinam, Mikol Hagbal Nitztav Aleim, he didn't change from all the limitations that he was commanded. He kept on track. He didn't lose track of what he was supposed to do and what he was not supposed to do. So that is the idea, that we have this like tension in mitzvahs between Mesiras Nefesh, but yet being in a state of Hagbola and limitation and so on. Well, the Milam is a higher level in Mesiras Nefesh. Inyan HaTorah is the level of Torah, She'af Shaloi B'Shamayim Hi, though Torah is not in heaven, like we mentioned before, Al Nim Shalamata, Canal came down here below, until the Hashem and the Pamay Shemayla, the heavenly court, comes down here below to hear the Torah of the Yidden. Still in all, Hariksiv, it says, Min HaShamayim Yishmiach Es Koili V'Goymer, from the heavens, he made you hear his voice. Until the Chazal said that the words of Torah were likened to fire, like it says, behold, my words are like fire, which this idea of being like fire indicates it's being, despite being down here, it's still not susceptible to what's down here. Until the Chazal said that the words of Torah are likened to fire. I'm sorry, I'm repeating it again. Just like fire is not susceptible to impurity. So too the words of Torah is the not susceptible to tumah, and it's referring to a person that is tamei and he may study Torah. Now, the Rebbe is going to say in the brackets that we're talking here specifically about an emission from the person's body, known as tumas keri. And this shows on a very deep level of tumah. So he says in the brackets, to note, where the Chazal that's talking about that you could study Torah even though you're Tamei is talking about the type of tumas keri. That's such a disgusting thing that it says that this type of tumah never happened to a Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur because it would have been too low for his spiritual state. This means that even though it's possible that the Kohen Gadol would have been able to have become Tamei on Yom Kippur with other types of tumas, he might have even come in contact with a dead body, which is called the Avi Avois HaTumah, the most severe type of tumah. Kol Malkim Dafke Tumah is still in all, specifically this tumah, the tumah of keri, of an emission, though technically it's a much lighter tumah. You don't have to have the paraduma for it. You don't have to be tamei for 7 days and be sprinkled on the third day and the seventh day. As soon, once he goes to the mikveh and the night falls, that's it. He's tahir. Still in all, this was lo'ira l'kohen gadol. It didn't occur to a kohen gadol. Why? Why do we make such a big deal about this? That it's technically an easier tumah than some other tumas. It's explained in Mefarshim why this specifically was like it almost miraculously never happened to the Kohen Gadol in Kippur. Because this tumah is a much more inappropriate and disgusting type of tumah than other types of tumas. And even though we're dealing with such a type of tumah that is lower in a certain regards than other types of tumas, even of tumas mes, of tumah in contact with a dead body, still in all we say that the Torah is not susceptible to it. Still in all the words of Torah are not susceptible to even such a type of tumah because the words of Torah are likened to fire. In this regard, that the Torah has an advantage over mitzvahs, this non-susceptibility to tumah, this removal from the world of tumah. All the mitzvahs, you may only perform them with things that are kosher and permitted to be consumed. Was not ready for the heavenly work only things that are tahir and permitted in your mouth. So you can only use kosher animal hides for tefillin, sefer Torah, mezuzahs, etc., etc. Mash'enkin divrei Torah, as opposed to words of Torah, shagam kishnul modem idei adam tamei einam makablim tuma. Even when they're studied by a person that's tamei, they are not something that receive tumah. Therefore, a person may study Torah even in whatever state of tumah he may be. So therefore, that is the quality of Torah over mitzvahs. Mitzvahs needs to be something that's tahir, needs to be done with something that's kosher. But Torah, even if the person is not in a state of tahara, he could still study Torah. But on the other hand, also Torah is still in the way of drawing down the canal, like we said before, it's not in the heavens. This is also hinted in the fact that the words of Torah were likened to fire. In other words, the main point that we're bringing out that the Torah is likened to fire is how it's removed from this world. But now the Rebbe is going to use the comparison of Torah to fire to say how it's still bound up to the world. How come? Fire needs to have a wick that it can grasp onto it. Without the wick, without the wick, it will return to its root above, in the general element of fire that's under the moon, and then it wouldn't shine whatsoever. Since the words of Torah were likened to fire, if it's fire, it can only be because it's grasped on in the wick down here below. So that shows not just on the Havdalah of Torah, the Hafrosh of Torah, the Kaddish aspect of Torah, but it shows its connection with below. And therefore, the main idea of self-sacrifice in a way of being separated and removed, totally the level of Kedusha, that's in davening, it's in a way of elevation from below to above. Kaddish Aleph, that's the first Kaddish of the three Kaddishes. And we said that also corresponds to the three crowns that the Malachim made for Hashem, one crown that he took for himself, and that's the first Kaddish. It's the crown that Hashem placed on his head. Bottom of the page. Where it says, you shall be holy because I am holy, moving, it's understood. Also the crowns of Kedoshim, and you shall make yourself holy, that he placed on the heads of the Yidden. What are the crowns that he placed on the heads of the Yidden? We said the crown that's on his head, that's the level of davening. The crowns on the heads of the Yidden are Torah, Gnos Chasodim, top of page Reis Samachay. So still in all, even those crowns are related to his crowns. They also come down through the crown that he placed on his head, the crown of I am holy that he put on, that's the level of davening. What's the connection? So because davening is the preface and introduction and precursor to all these other avodas, we can say the explanation this is. According to what's explained, look at the Torah on Parshas Bracha, at length in many places. The Pirush Maimer Chazal, an explanation of what the Chazal say, Shetehei tfilasi smuchel mitasi. Abba Binyamin would daven that would ask for that it should be, my davening should be close to my bed. Meaning, as soon as I get up, that's when I should daven. And after davening, then I will be involved in Torah and in other things. The advantage of learning Torah that follows davening specifically is much higher than Torah that's studied prior to davening. That's why he wanted to daven first, as soon as he got up, and then learn Torah to be able to have that greater level of Torah learning than if he would first learn Torah. So in a similar vein, the Rebbe extrapolates from this, If it's so concerning Torah and davening, that Torah is impacted and elevated by davening beforehand, so the same thing is mitzvahs. But this is also understood concerning the fulfillment of mitzvahs after Torah study, that the davening makes those mitzvahs of a different quality, of a higher level. All the Chazal say that the order of a person's day should be Beis HaKnesses, from Shul to Beis HaMedrash to the Yeshiva to learning. And after you've had the davening, and after you've done the learning, Hanig v'minag derech eretz, act in the ways of the world. In other words, go to work. What's the idea of going to work? The idea of going to work is the rest of the day that we're spent in doing mitzvahs. That the mitzvahs that are performed after davening are much greater than that's performed before davening. This means the kishen that just like Torah study prior to davening, its advantage and its quality is not as great as the Torah study after davening. So to the mitzvah of putting on talis and tefillin, that these are seemingly preceding davening. This is only like a preparation for davening. And also the tzedakah, for example, that we give before davening, that it's about a preparation for davening. In a similar vein, also the learning that we're doing now, Chassidus before davening, is also we're learning to be able to daven. It's all about a preparation to davening. It's not mitzvahs for their own sake. Mitzvahs for their own sake should be done after davening, with the great impact that davening brings to those mitzvahs, just like the impact and the influence that davening brings to Torah learning. So he says that the tzedakah, that's only preparation for davening, is not the main thing. Vilu ikar mitzvah tzedakah, the main mitzvah of tzedakah. So too, the primary idea of mitzvahs that's involving physical matters. Like talis, for example, talis that we put on using physical wool with film, with yoiviklav gashmi and film, with physical ink and parchment, who inyan minig derech it's the idea of the custom of the ways of the world that follows the shul and follows the learning. Perhaps the talis and tefillin is appropriate to think in the times of the Tanoim and Amoraim, where they would walk around with talis and tefillin all day. I mean, we walk around with the talis chotin all day, but they would wear tefillin all day. So there was a tefillin that one wore as a preparation to davening, and then there was the tefillin that one wore and the talis that one wears after davening, which is the main idea of the mitzvahs once it's been brought about with the influence of davening. That's the entire idea of the descent of the neshama down here below. That's for the sake of an ascent, to draw down the three levels of holiness, that the three kodoshes, the three crowns into the world, the crown of davening and learning and mitzvahs. Because as we mentioned at the beginning in yesterday's shir, these are the three things that upon them the world stands. Torah, avodah, and gemilas chassadim. Even more so, there's a lush in the Mishnah that upon these three things, ha'olam kayam, the entire existence. It's not just being supported and energized, but its entire existence is about these three things. To such a degree, or the same opinions through our actions and service in this matter. In the time of Golas, we arrive at the time of Mashiach's time. Then when Mashiach comes, these three levels of Kedusha, of Kaddish, will be in its perfect way. In other words, the level of the davening and the learning and the mitzvahs will all be in its most perfect way. So he says, why is this so? What's the idea behind this? Being not Torah, and when Mashiach comes, it'll be the perfection and the level of Torah. That's the idea of Mashiach's Torah. that says that's Gilui Soy Tamel Mister Tzvonisel Kipirish Rashi Al Pasuk Ashkenim and Shikas Piu. Rashi in the Pasuk in the beginning of Shir Hashirim says, what's the mean? He will kiss me from the kisses of his mouth. It will be the revelation of the secrets of his reasons and the most concealed parts of the Torah. So that is the most perfect level of the Torah. Like we also mentioned in the previous mimer, that the Torah that's now is considered like Hevel, insignificant in vanities in comparison to the Torah of Mashiach's times. So when Mashiach, that the kedusha of the Torah will be so much greater. So too it will be the perfection and the idea of fulfillment of mitzvahs. Explained in many places. And the Rebbe Marash's well-known series of Amarim, beginning with the word v'kacha, of the Torah Oid, of the Torah's Chaim Pashas Vayechi, it's brought down this. The Pirish Mashakasav in explaining what it says in Musaf, V'sham Naslo Fenecha Chulu Kimitzah Sursenecha, that over there, only when Mashiach comes, that's when we will fulfill before you like the mitzvahs of your will. Now we're doing the mitzvahs, but it's not like your will. In other words, in the most perfect way possible. Why will it be then in the most perfect way possible? The Kivashaz Tiashlemis B'minachai. Since then, when Mashiach comes, will be the perfection in the animal kingdom. That the animal kingdoms is what we use for the karbanos. Like it says, that the wolf will live together with the sheep, and they will not do evil, they will not destroy, because the earth will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem like the waters covers the sea. So the animals that's used in the karbanos, we're talking about the karbanos. That will be, the animal will be in a perfect state. And also the person that brings the karbanos will be in the most perfect way, because the Yidden will be they won't have problems with the clippers. It'll be even the revelation of the individual Yechida that's in every single Yid. So obviously the Yid will be on his utmost highest level. So both the person and the carbon will be on its utmost highest level. And how is the Gilei Yechida of the individual Yid come about? Through the revelation of the general Yechida of Mashiach. Therefore also the actions of the karbanos, the performance of the karbanos, but not only the actions of the karbanos, but also v'chein klolos ma'isa mitzvahs. This includes all the actions of the mitzvahs will be betachas hashleimus, will be in the utmost way, because the object of the mitzvah, it's not just the animals will be perfect, everything in the world will be in a perfect state. So every object that we do the mitzvah with is going to be in its perfect state, and the person doing the mitzvah is in its perfect state. So it's understood when we combine both of them that the mitzvahs are going to be in the most elevated state possible. And the Rebbe continues on the last page in the Maimer, v'nois v'al shleimus the Torah mitzvahs, in addition to the perfection of Torah mitzvahs. Shehem ha'kedoshis shekenegdam v'meksarim shnosim b'rosh Yisrael, that these are the levels of Kaddish, that these correspond to the crowns that Hashem placed at the heads of the Yidden. Tiagam shleimus ha'keser shnosna kodesh baruch hu b'rosh, they'll also be the perfection of the crown that Hashem placed on his head. How come? Because then will be fulfilled what was foretold, that Hashem will be a king over the entire earth. And that day, Havaya will be one and his name will be one. So the ultimate crowning of Hashem, that Hashem is a king, that he has a crown on his head, when will that be the most powerful time? When Mashiach comes. Then when Mashiach comes, it will not just be a revelation of the power of the doer and the thing that's done. It will be the revelation of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, in such a way that your master will not dress himself up in any garments, without the concealment that the sun has its sheath. The same thing without the concealment that Shem Havaya has Elikim to conceal it, like the sun has its sheath. Because since when Mashiach comes, Hashem will take the sun out of its case, out of its sheath, meaning that Shem Havaya will become revealed fully without the covering of Shem Elikim. This is accomplished through the avoid of Yidden in the time of exile. Those that hear themselves being mocked and scoffed and shamed, and do not respond, concerning them, the pasuk says, that those that love him are like the sun coming out in its full force, meaning when the Shem Havaya is removed from its concealment of Shem Elokim when Mashiach comes. Who are the ones that are hearing their shame? It's talking about the Jewish people and nations of the world tease and anger and annoy the Yidden and ask, where did your beloved go? In other words, where did Hashem go? Why did Hashem, who's the groom, leave behind Yidden, that's the bride, left alone in exile? How long was we being Golos? By days of Shein Meshivim through that we do not respond. Concerning the Yidden, the pasuk says, we would all say that those that love him are like the sun coming out in its full force. They merit the revelation of the Son of Hashem, that it takes the sun out of his sheath. So it should be for us speedily in our days, mamish, the same as Malagol, through our actions and service in the time of exile. When she calls for Rama, like the Rama says, mitzvah achas, through one mitzvah, it could be ma'aseh echad in action, or dibur echad, or even one speech, or machshav achsot, or even one thought for good. Machlias atmes kol oilam kulil tavskus, he tilts the scale for himself and the entire world for the side of merit. V'goyrim loy v'lahem shuv v'atzol v'atzlocha. He causes for him and for them a salvation and also success. Is one of the versions of the Rambam. He says, instead of Hatzolah, it says Hatzlacha Shoilim Kulei Nasa B'Shleimus Yosin M'Shoy Beis B'Riyosei, that the world entirely becomes perfect, even more so than the way it was when it was first initially created. Ba'ifin De'el tells Shemaim V'Aretz in such a way that these are the offspring and the histories of the heavens and the earth. Since the Mashiach comes, it'll be like it says, Elotodus Peretz, the ancestor of Mashiach, that will be bursting forth in a way of Bligvul, not just in the limitations of the world. It'll be fulfilled, what was foretold, that Hashem will be a king over the earth. That day Hashem will be one. His name will be one. In the true and complete redemption through Mashiach. And speedily in our days, mamish.